They're wont to act prejudiciously, and they're wont to act without any regard for other people and themselves. That night, under the lights of the Bonanza set, Dan Blocker, the big, gentle man audiences always saw as the nation's good guy, suddenly looked straight into the camera and said a line that sent a chill through the entire crew. If you knew how those so-called Hollywood legends really treated people of color, you'd stop calling them legends. No one expected such words to come from Blocker, a man known for his kindness, free of scandal and drama. But it was that very gentle giant who had seen most clearly what audiences were never meant to witness. Blocker had watched elegant stars adored worldwide dismiss a black choreographer simply because they didn't like that skin color. He had heard suave matinee idols, once worshipped by the public, send memos ordering, "Never let a Negro stand on equal footing with me." And he had stood frozen as another legend treated Mexicans, indigenous people, and black people like dust beneath his feet, right in front of the entire crew. Golden Age Hollywood looked like a dream. But Dan Blocker knew the truth. That dream was built on fear, silence, and whispered slurs behind the scenes. Which of Hollywood's 10 greatest legends were the cruelest racists once the spotlights went out? And what secret compelled him, the kindest soul on Bonanza, to step forward and expose everything? The answer is in the video. Watch until the end, because the last person will surprise you the most. 10. Audrey Hepburn, the silver screen angel and the silent prejudice. In the public eye, Audrey Hepburn was always the embodiment of elegance. The iconic little black dress, the doe-eyed gaze, the gentle smile that could soften the whole world. Hollywood called her the walking angel. Fashion houses worshipped her as an unshakable aesthetic ideal. UNICEF regarded her as an immortal humanitarian symbol. But Dan Blocker once said a line that left many stunned. "Not every angel has white wings." Behind that saintly exterior, Hepburn carried a layer of quiet prejudice known only to insiders. During the production of My Fair Lady, when the studio proposed hiring a black choreographer who was rising thanks to his exceptional talent, Hepburn flatly objected. The reason recorded in the crew's internal notes: "I'm not comfortable working with him." A short sentence, yet enough to end an artist's prospects simply because of his skin color. Even more shocking was Blocker's account of private conversations among celebrities at fundraising events, where Hepburn, UNICEF's public face, allegedly requested the removal of images of black children from major media campaigns. Why? Their faces were not aesthetically fitting and not impactful. To UNICEF staff at the time, such a request felt like a blade cutting into the organization's mission, helping all children regardless of race. But what angered Blocker the most was a remark Hepburn let slip backstage at a studio party when Sidney Poitier, the first black man to win the Best Actor Oscar, a symbol of talent and intellect, was mentioned. "He's too black to play a romantic lead." A sentence light as a breeze, yet heavy as tons of stone hurled at a generation of actors of color striving to find their place in a white-centric Hollywood. The contrast between the image of fairy Audrey and these alleged hidden biases was something Blocker could never forget. He once told a colleague, "I don't hate Audrey. I hate how we glorify an icon without daring to look at its shadow." Hepburn did not shout discrimination like some stars. She didn't write memos banning black people from coming near, nor did she use slurs on camera. But it was the silence, the polite, refined forms of exclusion that made prejudice more insidious. And to Blocker, sugar-coated discrimination was still discrimination, perhaps even harder to confront because people refused to believe it existed. But the next name is an even starker paradox, a man the world hails as a progressive activist, yet whose private diary made Dan Blocker exclaim, "He fought for justice only when the cameras were rolling." 9. Marlon Brando, the part-time activist. Marlon Brando, immortal as Don Corleone, the rebellious artist, the outspoken supporter of civil rights once praised by the media, has long been seen as the emblem of progressive Hollywood. When he sent Sachin Littlefeather to accept his Oscar in protest of Hollywood's treatment of Native Americans, the whole world applauded as if a saint had stepped onto the red carpet. But Dan Blocker, who had worked closely with Brando at various backstage events, had another name for him. An activist, only when there's an audience. Because the truth was never as glamorous as the speeches on stage. In Brando's personal diary, pages never meant for public eyes, he referred to Martin Luther King Jr. as a product of the media, as though the civil rights movement wasn't the life-and-death struggle of millions, but merely a publicity campaign. Blocker said he heard the same idea straight from Brando at a closed-door party, where the veteran actor shrugged at the mention of MLK. He's no different from an image crafted for television. But if that wasn't shocking enough, the financial records were what finally destroyed Blocker's faith. While Hollywood hailed Brando as a voice for minorities, he was secretly channeling money into an organization opposing interracial marriage, a group that fueled fear of people of color under the slogan of protecting cultural purity. No one outside knew. No one imagined that the man who spoke for justice was funding the very injustice he denounced. And perhaps the moment Blocker realized Brando wasn't the man the public wanted him to be came backstage at an award show. Internal notes indicate Brando refused to present an award to a black artist, claiming it was inappropriate for the ceremony. Blocker recalled hearing Brando say outright, "It's fine if a black person wins, but standing next to me on stage, not yet." A line that froze the entire tech crew in place. To audiences, Brando was the one brave enough to confront Hollywood for the sake of the oppressed. To Dan Blocker, he was merely a star who could act the role of the good man as convincingly as any character he ever played. And if Brando was a half-baked hero, the next name on Blocker's list was anything but. This man didn't pretend to be kind, didn't perform progressiveness. He openly believed himself a member of a superior race. 8. John Wayne, the classic case of white supremacy in Hollywood. In Hollywood history, few figures have been as towering and immovable as John Wayne. He was the nation's cowboy, the face of patriotism, the masculine icon America cherished for generations. But to Dan Blocker, Wayne was the clearest example of what he called white supremacy in a cowboy hat. Unlike Audrey Hepburn with her velvet-wrapped prejudice, or Brando with his half-baked ideals, John Wayne was blunt. No disguises, no remorse, no apologies. In an interview that Hollywood later tried to bury as deep as possible, Wayne stated outright, "I believe in white supremacy." No metaphors, no euphemisms. A bare declaration of where he believed white people should stand, above everyone else. Blocker recounted that Wayne carried that worldview into both his life and his work. When the civil rights movement erupted, many artists chose silence. Wayne did not. He called those fighting for equality communist agitators, and openly aligned himself with politicians who opposed integration. And it wasn't just talk. Wayne physically assaulted black journalist James Hicks after being questioned about his opposition to the Civil Rights Act. Not an argument, a real attack. 2 witnesses confirmed it. What chilled Blocker the most, however, lay deeper, in the way Wayne used his power to distort history. While making The Alamo, 1960, Wayne instructed the writing team to erase the contributions of Mexican fighters, calling their inclusion colored propaganda. A single note from him was enough to force the entire crew to revise the script, reshaping history into a version that matched his worldview. White men as the sole heroes. And the system extended beyond the screen. Wayne's production company, Batjack Productions, enforced a whites-only hiring policy for years. Any application from Black, Mexican, or Native American candidates was dismissed immediately. Qualifications irrelevant. Skin color decided everything. To audiences, John Wayne was the immortal symbol of classic America. To Dan Blocker, he was a reminder that Hollywood doesn't just tell stories, it molds ideology, and Wayne used his power to spread poison. If John Wayne was the man shouting supremacy from the biggest podium, the next name on Blocker's list is someone the public never suspected. A delicate, sweet icon whose red lipstick hid a machinery of contempt that many victims still shudder to recall. 7. Judy Garland. Beneath the red lipstick was a real machinery of contempt. Judy Garland appeared before the public as a fragile girl, with the glistening sad eyes of the Wizard of Oz and a voice that melted the world. Hollywood liked to call her the most delicate soul of its golden age. But according to Dan Blocker, there was another Judy entirely. One no article, no legend, no Technicolor reel ever wanted to mention. Blocker once said, "There are people who are cruel with a punch. Garland did it with a shrug and a contemptuous glance." On the set of The Harvey Girls, Garland demanded that a black dancer be fired immediately, simply because he accidentally